Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I see I'm actually standing between yourself and lunch. My name is Mo Sadiqui. I am Director of Systems Integration at Rogers Communication in Canada. So my team is responsible for building and operating application integration and security integration APIs. How many Canadians in the audience? A couple of them. So for those of you who aren't from Canada, Rogers Communications is a diversified communications and media company in Canada. We're Canada's largest wireless carrier. We have close to 10 million wireless subscribers, and we're lighting up LTE across Canada, blazing fast speed. In addition, we are a leading Canadian cable provider. We have close to 2 million residential homes connected on our cable network. We recently announced 1 gig internet speeds. In addition to that, we also own the Toronto Blue Jays for the baseball aficionados, Canada's baseball team. So a lay of the land of the systems integration portfolio at Rogers. So we have about 50 plus service consumers, consuming over 2,500 APIs, which are generating close to like 75 million transactions per day. And my team is actually comprised of over 60 dev, test, and operational resources. And for our systems integration needs, we integrate using close to like 7 protocols. And we actually have a vision of releasing products and features which are powered by APIs into our production environment when ready. And our vision is to be a 24/7, 365, follow the sun, consumer self-serve company. So we actually have a desire to continuously deliver products and services to market faster. But along this journey, we actually experienced quite a few challenges. For example, the test environments, they're actually of enterprise grade, so there's complexity associated with them. There's manual configurations, which are often error prone. And once we actually get the configurations right, there are stability challenges as well. So whenever we actually have downtime, it actually impacts testing schedule. And we used to have a non-existent systems integration testing environment. And as a result, testing was often shifted to the very right, cascading into production. For example, we used to have frequent production assurance tests and frequent business readiness testing as well. So effectively, we were actually creating a culture of managing defects in production, which were increasing our IT cost, and also there was a business cost to poor customer experience. By the way, towards the end of the presentation, I'm actually going to open the floor for questions and answers as well. So, as we wanted to bring products and services to market faster, we actually wanted to accelerate continuous delivery. And that required commitment from us, so we actually made an investment in CA service virtualization. The idea was using this product, we're actually going to build an emulated systems integration testing environment. And using this environment, we're actually going to increase frequency and improve quality of releases. So that was the commitment. And the commitment actually required some action as well, which was cultivating a culture where we actually shifting testing to the left. And also promote test-driven development to improve quality of IT delivery. For example, I own APIs, and internally there's actually consumers who are actually consuming those APIs. For example, our e-commerce channels. And we actually wanted to go into QA cycles and production at the same time as well. So my teams would actually come up with an API design, and we wanted to feed this API design through service virtualization, so we can actually enable a virtualized endpoint, which we can advertise to our service consumers. And they are actually doing their development using this virtual API. And at the same time, we're actually doing our development as well. So if you're actually discovering any defects, those are actually discovered during development phase when it's actually easier to fix and cost effective. And essentially, we were shortening our delivery cycle to actually increase IT throughput. And the benefits that we are seeing, that we are actually achieving, number one, we're shaving our IT infrastructure spend by virtualizing a systems integration testing environment. And as I mentioned earlier, we're discovering defects earlier in the SDLC where they're easier and cost-effective to fix because we haven't closed the lid on the box. And the main vision is increasing speed to market of products and services. So we have an investment in API management products from CA, which comprises of API Gateway and API Developer Portal as well. And we also have an investment in Service Virtualization from CA, also known as LISA. And these two products can be married together to achieve like tremendous value. And the way we actually were able to like harness this value is from three pillars. And we actually call these three pillars plan, build, and run. So what actually happens during the plan phase is that the API Developer Portal from CA, we're actually using that for cataloging APIs, not just for live production APIs, but also the virtualized APIs as well, which we're virtualizing through Service Virtualization. And the idea is, we advertise these APIs through the API Developer Portal, and to increase better discovery of these APIs. If there's an initiative at Rogers happening who wants to consume these APIs, but they want to start consuming the virtualized APIs as well to enable test-driven development, they can actually go to this self-serve resource center where they can actually find these APIs, subscribe to those APIs, and start doing test-driven development using those APIs. And also, increased adoption of those APIs is actually accelerating IT delivery as well. Because when we actually go into QA, during the QA phases, before we actually promote the code into production, we've actually discovered and fixed a lot of defects earlier in the life cycle. So QA is getting smoother and smoother. Traditionally, what used to actually happen at Rogers Communications was QA was the first time everything was actually gelling together. So the first 2 to 3 weeks of QA cycles were actually lost resolving integration issues. And these issues should really have been discovered earlier in the life cycle, but because they were not, QA cycles were actually getting compromised because the date to market or bringing product and service to production is not really changing because there's a lot of go-to-market plans associated with that. But at the same time, integration issues are actually being discovered in QA, and we have to solve those issues as well. QA cycles were actually getting compromised, not necessarily from a functional testing perspective, but more from a performance testing perspective. And these products and services would actually end up in production, and as a result, we would actually experience performance issues in production, which would eventually have an impact on brand, customer experience, and there would be financial impact as well. So, idea is, have this catalog, using this catalog, make the APIs available to the resources out there who actually want to consume these APIs during project initiation phases so that it's enabling test-driven development, and when we're actually taking products and services into QA phase, it's actually cleaner. The next step is actually build. So sometimes there's actually a paradigm shift actually happening at Rogers. Most of the consumers of these APIs are internal consumers, but we're actually seeing external consumers consuming our APIs as well. And this trend is actually increasing. And at times, we actually have to certify these external clients in production. But at the same time, we actually don't want to be risking our production assets, the traditional IT systems of records, also known as the back-end systems. We don't want to be compromising that by testing in production. So essentially, the value that we actually get from service virtualization is that we can actually virtualize those traditional IT assets using service virtualization. Then we can actually leverage the integration between service virtualization and API Gateway. So when a request is actually coming from an external client, which we actually want to certify in production, we can leverage API gateway to channel those requests to a virtualized system, as opposed to like a real live production system. And then we can actually like run our automated test cases to actually like certify that. And if the results are actually satisfactory, then we can automatically service API gateway can be configured to route traffic to real backend systems or real systems of records, as opposed to like virtualized systems. So there's some automation, runtime automation actually happening over there, which is delivering business benefits. And the other pillar, which we're actually leveraging, integration between service virtualization and API gateway to achieve business benefits, is so the API gateway is actually like a gateway into our APIs. And there's a lot of real-time transactions actually flowing through that gateway. And when we actually build, often what actually happens, the feedback that I actually get from my service consumers is that, hey, you're building those APIs using service virtualization, but the response that I'm actually getting from those APIs is very generic. It's not very meaningful. How can we actually like improve the response of those APIs? And the synergy between the API management and the service virtualization product can actually be leveraged to improve responses of the virtualized APIs. In other words, we have a lot of traffic actually like flowing through this API gateway. And we can create a feedback loop, which is taking this traffic and using this traffic, leveraging this traffic to actually like improve the quality of responses from our virtualized APIs. And we have actually found that to be working quite well. And about 6 months ago, we actually like began a journey of virtualizing all the APIs in my portfolio. As I mentioned earlier, close to 2,500 plus APIs. And so far, we have actually virtualized close to like 800 and counting APIs. And initially, when we actually started testing, certifying these virtualized APIs with our service consumers as well, so that we can actually leverage, we can actually create a systems integration testing environment. That was the feedback as well. And that's when we realized, hey, you know what? We have an investment in API gateway as well. And why don't we actually like leverage the integration between API gateway and service virtualization to improve the responses returned by these virtualized APIs, make it more meaningful so that it's close to production. And we've actually like utilized that integration. And so far, the feedback from the clients is phenomenal. They're like, hey, you know what? This is returning a meaningful response that we're actually used to seeing in production as well. And here, you know, we're actually starting to create a systems integration testing environment at Rogers, which I previously indicated did not exist. And by having this infrastructure available, we're beginning to see that we're doing more testing during the development phases as well. And there's been a tremendous improvement in the number of integration testing defects that we actually discovered in QA, less and less. And the plan is to actually, like, by Q3 of next year, virtualize all of the APIs in my portfolio, close to like 2,500 and growing. So I'll actually open the floor to questions and answers now. Yeah. There's a microphone over there.
I have a question regarding the internal and external consumers. So this is based on security. I'm from Discover Financial Services, so basically a financial company. So how are you, you mentioned like you are protecting your environment, production environment, and you are certifying them virtually. So when I have like internal consumers and external consumers, what are other securities that you are using today to secure your internal communication versus external communication?
So at Rogers, we're not discriminating between, I'll tell you why, because security is actually very paramount to us. And the APIs in my portfolio are actually like exposing key enterprise data. And there's some stats out there saying that most of the fraud actually is internal fraud. So that's why we're actually not discriminating between internal consumers and external consumers as well. And both the APIs are actually like protected by the API gateway. So think about the API gateway as the bouncer at the door, and it's got some capabilities, API keys, and using those API keys, we're actually authenticating both set of consumers, internal consumers as well as external consumers. Because what could actually happen is that if we don't follow that model, if we keep them open, if we compromise security, then we're actually like exposing these even internal APIs to security breaches, and we don't want to be in the newspaper as the next, the Sony or the next Ashley Madison.
Okay. So another question regarding the API portal. The analytics part of it, have you utilized it? In what area like that analytics part of API portal helped you?
Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
So the analytics part of API portal, I just wanted to know, like, because we are getting into the API world, we are pretty new. We are just standing up the environment. So as a financial company, we are very interested in analytical data. So just wanted to know how you are utilizing that part of the portal.
So that's an excellent question. I'm actually glad that you actually asked that question. So traditionally in SOA shops, there was a concept of design time governance. And in modern API management shops, there's actually a concept of runtime governance as well. In other words, here's my API, provide me some metrics or analytics on those APIs as well. Like who is consuming those APIs and how many times a day they're actually consuming that API. And once you actually have insight into those numbers, you can unlock a lot of opportunities. For example, metering, or for example, if you're looking at monetizing your APIs as well, you can say like, hey, consumer A, you're calling me 50 times a day for your business reasons, and I'm going to start like charging you or metering you. And the API portal actually like provides that kind of business intelligence for us.
Thank you.
You mentioned something very interesting, which is deploying the services both in QA and also production at the same time. How did you achieve that? I mean, how was it communicated to the consumers that they are not looking at the fully baked services? And how long did it take for your DevOps culture to reach to that point?
That is a good question as well. So the DevOps culture at Rogers is actually maturing. We're not like really deploying into QA and production at the same time. But the point that I was trying to illustrate is that we actually have to go through QA into production as well to actually like certify a solution which we're actually building from a functional perspective, from a performance perspective as well. The challenge that we were actually having initially was the QA cycles, because those are actually limited. The solutions have to go into production as of a certain date because we got some go-to-market plans around those solutions as well. But what used to happen was that you got this many QA cycles, and the first few weeks of those QA cycles were actually like spent resolving integration issues because we had no concept of systems integration testing or test-driven development. That was a challenge. And by virtualizing our APIs, we actually managed to create a systems integration testing environment, which is pre-QA, and we're also enabling test-driven development as well. So hey, that API is actually available. While you're a service consumer, you're actually doing your development, I'm building my APIs as well. Let's do development at the same time in parallel, and whatever integration defects that you're actually having, discover them during development phase so that we can actually fix it then. Then when we actually go into QA, it's cleaner. We don't see integration issues. We used to have this many cycles, and then we're starting to find that, hey, you know what, that's too many cycles. And we actually build those cycles in our release calendars is because of integration issues. But now we're actually seeing that, hey, integration issues are actually like happening towards the left end of the spectrum. We don't need this much. We only need this much for functional testing and for performance testing as well. That's how we're actually achieving speed. Sorry, yeah.
Hi, you mentioned that you have about 800 APIs integrated so far. Uh, my question is, how long did it take you to get to that point, and what kind of efforts was required to integrate 800 APIs? And if you were to go from 800 to 2500, which is your entire portfolio, what kind of additional effort you think would be required?
So it's taken us about 6 months to get to 800 APIs. And it's not just from an execution perspective as well, but there's also mobilization happening. Because the concept is, it's, even though it's been kicking around in our company for a few years, but the whole creating this culture and creating this center of excellence is still new. So getting our resources up to speed on these technologies as well, and finding a right partner who's actually able to enable us in doing that. And initially, as I was indicating earlier, when we actually created those virtual APIs, it's kind of phase one, because we actually wanted to achieve these milestones and phases. And then after a particular phase is actually complete, take a look at the results as well, and use the feedback from the previous phase as inputs into the next phase to actually improve our execution. So when we actually wrapped up our phase one, we said hey, you know what, let's certify with the service consumers regarding these APIs. And the first feedback that we actually got was, hey, you're not getting meaningful response. This is just returning me generic data, like yes or no, it's working or not. And I really can't use that for integration testing, because it's very basic. I need to see some meaningful responses. And that's when we actually got together with CA and said, hey, you know what, can we do something? Can we actually marry API management and service virtualization to actually achieve better results? And fortunately, there was actually a solution out there. And these APIs, especially for the ones which do exist in production, traffic is actually being channeled through API gateway. We said why don't we actually use this data to actually improve the response of the virtual APIs as well. So I would say 6 months for 800 APIs. There were a lot of lessons being learned as well. And you got to start walking before you actually start running. And I think we're done walking. We're actually prepared to start running now. That's why target is end of Q2, early Q3, virtualize all of the APIs in my portfolio. Interesting thing is that initially I mentioned that we got 7+ protocols. The first set that we actually picked was some of the easier protocols, like SOAP, REST, but we got other protocols as well, like EJB, and those are going to be challenging, and we're actually starting to dive into that space right now. There was a question over here as well.
Could you elaborate a bit on the organizational aspects, roles? What are the testers doing with service virtualization? Who's creating the virtual assets? How the developers are participating into that? If you could clarify a bit how that's working.
That is a good question as well, because I ran into that challenge myself as well. You need to have the right organizational structure and the culture for this practice to be successful. And initially, what I was actually thinking was have a team of, a service virtualization team within one of my pillars, actually virtualizing all of those APIs. But the challenge that I actually ran into was I got 2,500 APIs, and I got 50+ consumers as well. And I don't have that many resources. I can't create a pillar of that many resources. A specialized, SWAT team of service virtualization experts, because it's not scalable. And the strategy that we're actually going to be embarking on is mobilizing our development team as well for virtualizing the APIs as well. So going forward, when we're actually building a new API, have the developers who are actually who are actually building those APIs as well, before building those APIs, virtualize those APIs as well, so that we can be scalable. I'm still going to have my team of service virtualization experts, but this team is really to, like a L2, L1.5 team was actually helping out the development team, advising them on best practices, interfacing with our testing center of excellence, interfacing with our service virtualization center of excellence as well, patching the service virtualization product as well, making sure that the infrastructure for that product is actually in good health as well. Good question.
when you're using your API gateway, how is the development process? Like, in a sense, do you do a multi-developer environment for, you know, creating the APIs on the API gateway, or how do you do it? Do you have a dedicated team who do the migrations, who do the, you know, development of the APIs, you know, orchestration, right? The orchestration of the APIs and all that,
Yeah.
or every developer does that?
So
And also, sorry, and also, if you can speak in terms of, you know, the versioning of the APIs that you do, right? You know, you roll out probably 100 APIs once and next an X amount, right? So how do you do the versioning of the, you know, versioning strategy that you followed?
So that is a good question. I'll actually try to answer that in two parts. The first one regarding the development team for the API gateway. The way we actually leverage the API gateway in my portfolio is kind of like a bouncer at the door. It's authenticating and authorizing the consumers calling those APIs. And I actually have a specialized team who's actually looking after that authenticate, basically, you know, exposing all the different APIs built on my portfolio using the API gateway, and making sure that we actually feeding the right policies on the API gateway to actually authorize and authenticate the consumers. That is the development team responsible for that. Sometimes, you know, we build APIs in my portfolio which require like orchestrations with many different systems, and composing those orchestrations and returning a meaningful response to the clients. And that's a different team which is actually doing that. And because we actually use a different product for that one, which is actually enabling, there's different products out there. Like the product that we actually use is BPEL, which is allowing us to compose various different backend calls into like one API and expose that API through API gateway. And that requires a different set of skills. So that's a different team.
So you're using API gateway just for reverse proxy?
I would say more around authenticating and authorizing. It's a gateway. It's a gateway into the portfolio.
Okay. And also, like in terms of the development team that you said, so how does the workflow happen? Like developers develop the services in the backend, and then they ask this development team to expose their APIs through the gateway, or how does that?
So good thing is that, you know, all of those development teams actually report into me. And I make sure that, you know, there's actually cross collaboration as well, because I also have a planning and governance team reporting into me, and the planning and governance team is actually making sure there is actually communication and cross collaboration, and they're actually my intake channel as well. So if there's a request for a new API to be built, they intake that request and they actually see through the delivery. And when they actually see through the delivery, they actually know what teams to actually engage. I got an application architecture team, engage them for the initial design of an API. Then I have a development team, multiple development teams. One development team is actually responsible for if the requirement is actually there to compose an API using BPEL. Another development team is actually responsible for whatever they're actually building, exposing that through the API gateway. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay. So there is a strategy that we are embarking on for versioning as well, because we actually have multiple consumers of an API. And sometimes one of those consumers may actually come around and say, hey, you know what, I want to make a change. And that change could be a minor change. And if it's a minor change, we want to be making sure that it's not disruptive to the other service consumers. So that's when we actually branch off a version and say, hey, it's a minor change. We're actually going to come up with a new version, call it version 1.1, and just expose it to you, just only to you, so that we're not really disrupting the other service consumers. At the same time, we want to be making sure that we're not maintaining multiple versions in our portfolio, because that becomes an operations nightmare. Sorry.
How do you manage the rollbacks and rollouts? Let's say you deploy an API and it breaks, right? And you want to roll back. How do you do that?
So both the words, so let's say we're we keep 3 versions live in production. And this practice is maturing as well. And if a client actually moves up from version 1.1 to version 1.2, if for whatever reason it's not working in production, version 1.1 is still alive in production. And using the API gateway, we just tell them, hey, you know what, this is the endpoint for version 1.1, this is the endpoint for version 1.2. And it's a configuration change on the client side to start consuming version 1.1. There was a question at the back as well. Okay, and it looks like I'm actually out of time as well. But there's a lot of exciting other sessions happening as well related to this space, and I encourage all of you to attend those sessions. And if anybody wants to have a quick chat with me, happy to have a conversation with you offline. Thank you.